Greetings Guardians, my name's Bife here. Maya Sundaresh has a major source of power born from the destruction of the Witness, the Echo of Command. But within each of the Echoes, we have more than just a well of paracausal power, more than just the combined force of light and darkness. These Echoes have fragmented memories of those who were once part of the memories of the Witness, memories that have come to life. These memories, found in darkness, merged with the light of the Traveler, real enough to be as if they were the people they once represented. In the same way that the Echo of Navigation held a memory of Oryx the Taken King, Maya Sundaresh's Echo also held one such memory. However, in Maya's case, the Echo contained a memory of one of Oryx's victims, a member of a species called the Kugu, a species that is now extinct. An admiral of their great fleets known as Takal. Prior to the events of Edge of Fate, it appeared that Takal was in lockstep with Maya Sundaresh and her plans. But now, with everything that has happened, and with the death of 3 in particular, it seems like Takal might soon be showing some interesting development. There may be some indications here that the Conductor is not as invincible as we once believed, and her closest confidant, the memory within the Echo itself, may well soon turn on her, if all conditions are met. So if we're going to begin with all of this, I think we need to establish a few more basics about the Kugu as a society, in order to understand Takal as a character. I say that predominantly because if we're going to see him betray Maya, we need to understand what governs his personality to understand why he might do that. I say his personality, but also it's about understanding how the Kugu see things generally. We see things differently, is the easiest way I could put it, but, well, the reasons why are kind of complex. So let's start from the top. The first time the Kugu are mentioned is in the Books of Sorrow. They are described by Oryx as strong enough to protect 4 nearby star systems, loyal and stubborn, but with a certain grace to them. They're also herd animals, so they stick together in large groups. However, as we learned later, there's more to it than that. They're less herd animals and more of a concentrated swarm. This is reflected in a lot of moments in their society that can be seen through Takal's memories, and in moments in Takal's life that we can see through the lore. We see how it impacts their armies and their fleets. In the Dynasty lore book from Echoes, we see that Takal is basically given psychic command of an entire fleet by use of a device called a Golden Mantle, or Will Weaver. This device was meant to connect disparate intentions into unity, and it bound the fleet to Takal's thoughts and mind. However, this control was not something absolute. Individual captains were linked to him in what they refer to as concert, something where their thoughts were harmonized together, and they would still have the ability to individually control their vessels and report back to him. But in moments of concert, when the fleet felt the apprehension of its admiral, they would all slow to a halt. They would react as a group, and were capable of quick adaptive strategies the moment that Takal thought of them. In this manner, Takal wasn't like some queen ant directing her swarms through distant pheromones, and also wasn't like some massive, singular entity that happened to have 10,000 limbs. Instead, he was more like a general who was commanding at both the front lines with his troops and also in the rear guard, planning the greater moves of the campaign generally. The flow of command and information wasn't a one-way system. It wasn't dictatorial and singular. It was cooperative, complementary, and widely dispersed, but with a chain of command that was commonly respected, because in turn, the command respected the individual perspectives of those who were beneath it, all things built towards something greater. In addition to this, the Kugu's communal motions aren't just found in the movements of their fleets and the coordinations of their forces, they're also expressly found within the memories of the Kugu themselves. You see, the Kugu were able to access their ancestral memories and to listen to the voices and wisdom of those that came before them. This is also expressed within the Dynasty lore book, where we see Takal often calling upon the breadth of his entire ancestral line in order to source the necessary wisdom for any given moment. There are individual moments where he talks to just singular ancestors, and no matter what, he is always considering their perspective. Oftentimes, the entire ancestral warrior line of Ter moves through his actions, and it's rather remarkable to simply sit there and understand that. In this manner, the Kugu are greatly connected to the memories of their history and the ideas of their entire society. Physically speaking, the Kugu are also a weird species, or rather, they were a weird species given that they're now extinct. Many limbs, strange tentacle-like manes, their history being something that is close to Great Plains and yet also to the shallows of water, and Maya describing them as many-limbed cephalopods, all paints a really weird and interesting picture of what these creatures might have looked like at one point. In a certain sense, I feel almost kind of sad that we don't see them properly in-game. The entire manner in which the Kugu as a society is described makes them seem almost more idyllic and connected in a way that our current society sorely lacks. We have the ability to connect with anyone over the internet, and yet we are more disconnected and lonely than ever. Meanwhile, the Kugu had the ability to access the wisdom of their ancestors and call upon them in times of need, either to balance their own perspectives or to see if they were moving away from something that was incorrect, perhaps. Having the ability to call on the wisdom of your ancestors is one thing. Having the ability to sit as a mind in concert with other beings, though, that's entirely something else. It makes me wonder if there's a word for feeling loss over something that you've never known. Even me, as someone who is a rather individual person who doesn't always like to be challenged from their loneliness, I can see the attraction of something like that. It seems peaceful, almost. It's important to understand one more critical detail, which is that the Kugu seemingly acquired these powers, these abilities to commune with each other and their ancestors, through some connection to darkness. This perhaps shouldn't be surprising given that under the soil of their homeworld, near one of their most holy sites, there was a vessel of the Black Fleet, a pyramid ship. An entire mountain grew over it in time. It's entirely possible that this was what was helping to nurture their connections to darkness in the first place, but that's not truly confirmed. However, considering the actions of the Witness against the Hive, it's not impossible that for millennia the Kugu had been nurtured for the slaughter, specifically so that the Witness could pluck them in that moment and allow them to join the final shape in some form or another. All this detail about the Kugu helps us to understand what Tikal was like as a character. He was from a society that valued collaboration and could call out for guidance when needed. He was a fearsome commander, but he was also a shrewd tactician, a warrior who had bested fleets greater than his own, and who had been named Warden for putting down fractured factions of the Kugu that had been disconnected from the concert of minds that connected their entire civilization. But he didn't wear these triumphs as some great badge of conquest alone. He questioned those actions, and always wondered with regret whether things could have been done better. He understood that the story that was told to the majority was not always the way that it had actually panned out, and understood that it was clandestine, maybe less honorable actions that won the battles against those disconnected few. In his final command, Tikal saw the Hive destroy the homeworld of the Kugu, Set, and saw Savathun's flagship raising the long-buried pyramid ship from beneath the soil of one of Set's sacred mountains. He saw his world burn, and he sought to save his people by escorting them to a distant star. However, as was typical with the Hive, this was a moment where Tikal had been drawn into a trap. He was faced with a massive Hive armada, and his fleet, though more powerful individually, was not capable of winning this battle via attrition. In his last moments, he made a final, desperate charge against the pyramid ship, and heard the offer of the Witness to join the final shape itself. I have to presume that at least a part of him accepted. The rest of the Kugu are, however, unaccounted for. Maybe they live on through Tikal and his memory, maybe not. The safest assumption is that aside from the memory of Tikal found in the Echo of Command, the Kugu are dead and extinct. Tikal has seen a remarkable amount of loss, and even this mere memory of him that exists and was sourced probably from the moments prior to his ultimate death still holds true to some of the values embodied by his people. At his heart and at his core, I think Tikal is a being that values cooperation. His entire species was built not by command, but by collective might. They were truly a herd. Individuality was not crushed, but was instead woven into the stronger fabric of a greater society that was beneficial to those who were different, and whose differences were beneficial to the whole. Different voices from the past that had a different perspective on current situations were listened to, and where the advice of contemporaries in the present was different, those contemporaries were not shunned. Instead, their voices were incorporated into their society and chorus, like a descant underscoring a choir's greater tune. More than this, Tikal also held a fair degree of personal doubt and skepticism. He did not believe himself to be infallible by the looks of things. He cross-examined his own actions and the actions of others, and was brutally honest with the scale and nature of his shortcomings. His role as warden might have been that of a leader, but he was still just a single part of the greater herd, both in body and spirit, both in the physical present where he had commanded the last of the great fleets of Set, and in the psychic past where he was merely one of the great line of Te. Compare him, then, to Maya Sundaresh, and with that you can start to see the differences and the similarities. She is also obsessed with the past and what it can build for the future. She is also a leader and has a great degree of control over her Vex, and has also given them a degree of individuality compared to the greater Vex collective. However, this is where the similarities seem to end, because then there are some stark differences. I get the impression that Tikal values those voices that he doesn't agree with, because they provide him with a greater perspective that leads to his own betterment. Even if they disagree with him, he understands the chain of command, and in the time of the Kugu, so did they. Dissent was not truly rebellion until rebellion was declared. It was a way of creating something more out of a terrible situation. Disagreement rendered consensus. Maya, on the other hand, is truly a dictator, and has no care for the alternative voices around her. She may have given the Vex of the chorus individuality, but that hasn't meant that the Nessian Schism is able to express its individuality towards any purpose that doesn't suit her objectives. There is also a massive void of compassion. Tikal is a character that genuinely seems to care about the losses that his people incurred. He cares about their individual lives, and he understands that they have value. Maya's approach, on the other hand, is about as cold and callous as one can imagine. Tikal puts up with confrontational officers in a theater of war and held them in line with respect. Maya killed her own wife for being confrontational in a moment where she had all the control in the world. And in that moment when she was called a monster, she degoused her wife, along with hundreds of copies of her wife that equally had qualia and might as well have been just as real. So yeah, even aside from the massive size of the Kugu and the tentacles that they had on their manes, yeah, still they are very different people. Those differences in personalities started to present themselves more in the Imminent Law book, where Tikal shows his first few moments of divergence from Maya's perspective and goals. There's also a key philosophical disagreement at the heart of this first entry, which I think gets to the core of what may one day drive a wedge between Tikal and Maya. One last bit to understand is that when Tikal is communicating through the Echo, he appears within the lore tabs in the same manner that the old Kugu ancestral memories would. In text, this means that his individual statements and sentiments appear in short text bursts with semicolons before and after each word or set of words. This is how we can differentiate between what Maya is saying and thinking and what Tikal is advising her. The first entry that shows this potential lack of unity is ironically enough called The Root of Unity. It reads as follows. I'm standing on a glass pier stretching out over a pale alkaline lake. I'm crossing a static charged field of snow. I'm sitting on a bench in front of a Parthenon frieze worn over millennia to near perfect smoothness. Necessary change. Limb injure beasts more. No lone mind is sane. A prudent general accepts new perspectives. A prudent general wins the war. You're right. I need new tools. Refutation. Not tools. Allies. Listen. Attend your ancestor. I rise from the bench, dust off my hands, exit the museum and drop my ticket stub on the way out. My tools are waiting. I command you. Pull on the helix and the strand reform. Eukaryotes wriggle, swell, collapse. Be otherwise. Eat the apple. Leave the garden. Make a choice that comes from something other than your collective. I need variations in tactics. I need your minds to be separate from others. Respect what I can give you. Minotaurs kneel as I pass, my hands trailing sparks over their chassis. Hydras steal their cilia in respect. A hobgoblin holds up useless, shining pieces of scrap to weld to its body. Its hand is very steady as it applies the solder. Tell me why. Its hand jerks back. It lifts its face as a sunflower to that which gives it life. Directive, original. Hobgoblin. Observe, judge, enact. If independent equals true, then directive. Modified hobgoblin, independent. Observe, create, build. Self, other, beauty. An aspiring artist. Useless. A waste of mind. New eyes, new limbs, needed and necessary. Wrong, Tekal. An army is more than its head. An army is nothing but its head. Your cephalopod cousins and their independently minded limbs are not the model I work from. I strip the charge from the useless hobgoblin's radiolaria in one brisk pass of my palm over its head. The now empty chassis falls as I spin the recovered energy into a sphere, like yarn into a ball prickling at my hand. I raise another from the sea. This one knows its maker. Tell me who you are. Directive, original, harpy, study, compile, serve. Directive, modified, harpy, conductor, input required. I roll the marble of energy between my palms until it is smooth. Electrical wave forms, long and calm. The Vex lowers itself to my height at a thought, and I release the marble to let it sink into its huge bronze eye. Vast petals shudder and fold inwards. You'll do. Here we can start to see the major disagreements between Maya and Tekal. Maya is willing to use what wisdom she can find from Tekal as long as it fits her worldview. This entire point is really emphasized in this entire passage because it's all about perspectives. Tekal is looking at Maya in her single-mindedness and appeals to the idea that she needs to allow her individual choral Vex to create new perspectives for her to better comprehend the situation in front of her. Maya hears this, turns around, and then immediately says, yeah, absolutely, I need to get my tools ready. She sees the Vex as those tools. She doesn't see them as individuals, instead she sees them as a means to accomplish her own ends. This entire concept is encapsulated within their division. Tekal sees Maya's objectives and wants her to become more well-rounded as she approaches the situation, so he encourages her to accept those different perspectives so that she can learn from them, accept their wisdom, and maybe reach her goal more quickly, or perhaps more prudently and more completely. Maya, on the other hand, doesn't see her Vex like that. She disintegrates a hobgoblin for what she perceives as a useless divergence as it expresses artistic flair, something which is truly unique for the Vex. Then, when a harpy is risen, which is much closer to the conductor's desires, it actually rises and is given form by Maya and has no directive whatsoever. One needs to be input into it. She would prefer a mindless vessel that she can control and then reprogram over something individual but divergent from what she needs. Tikal appears to wish that the Vex individually are able to collectively express themselves so that their opinions can provide a wider and perhaps wiser perspective. Maya doesn't care about that at all, and is only intent on doing things in her way. She doesn't listen to any voices in the chorus but her own. This includes Tikal. This is really the first point at which Maya starts to push Tikal's opinion aside, and it really shows a lot about Maya and a lot about Tikal. He presents that collective and cooperative perspective, and Maya firmly rejects it for a dictatorial one instead. All of this disagreement and this philosophical divide is really important, and I think it starts to really culminate into dissent for Tikal in a moment that has defined the Fate Saga's beginning, and which has brought about consequences as of yet unforeseen by us and the wider system. Namely, Maya's murder of one of the 9. 3. We haven't covered this moment individually from Maya's perspective, and perhaps we should, but for the purposes of this video, focus on what Tikal is saying. It's not clear, but at this moment I think we might see the genesis for a few seeds of rebellion in Tikal. Maya's murder of 3 has set many things in motion, and perhaps this is one of them. This lore entry in question is found at the end of the Imminent Lore book, and it is called Gloria Mundi. It reads as follows. You sit there, 9 parasites latched onto the heartbeat of the world, untouched by time, by electromagnetism, by nearly any force I could name. All you need is a gravity well and the minds to fill it. And you're still afraid. Concern, alarm, rashness. Here, I'll solve your every problem. You'd like some life to pattern yourselves against? I'll give you life by the bucketful. Calm your thinking, descendant. Success is not found in haste. One golden earth brought forward into a painless future. Another corroded, wasted, emptied, sent back to take its place and bear the weight of the collapse. Listen to your ancestor. Listen. The Guardians can face it head on, just as they were always meant to. Listen. Come, coward. Bring her back. Dead air. A high, ringing tone. God itself has developed tinnitus. What have you done? Why didn't you listen? The mantle has never weighed so heavily on me. The crack of Tikal's fading voice scatters golden pain down the arc of my vertebrae. The death throes of Earth's failed leech are long and reverberate through space-time. It takes their full length to drag myself upright again, hold my shoulders straight again, recover a sense of the commander in my spine, and with it, an ache like a hollow tooth, a struck tuning fork, a droplet of water shivering on an unsteady leaf. I'll have all the life I'm owed. I'll have my golden age. I'll perform the trade myself. Your wretched siblings can't hide from me forever. Now, Tikal's entire dialogue here at the end after the death of 3 is cut off, as he's momentarily dislodged by the force of 3's death. The whole set of words he says is all jumbled up, just as he's trying to reassert himself and has probably been dislodged in Maya's spine. But based off of the spacing as it appears in the in-game lore tab, I think that the vague statement that we're missing reads something along the lines of, "What have you done? Why didn't you listen?" Again, that's me spitballing there, but I think based on what Tikal has been saying in the past and what he was saying moments before this happens, we can assess that at very least this moment has changed him and has made him reassess whether or not he should be loyal to the conductor. He does not seem to understand why she wouldn't listen, and there is clearly now a philosophical wedge that has been driven between the two of them. She only cares for her own plans and her own perspective. She will not listen to others, including to Karl. There may be some of you asking if it's possible for a Echo to lose its loyalty to its wielder, and I'm happy to tell you that we have actually got definitive proof of an answer for this. You may well know that the answer is yes, it can happen, and we know that thanks to Revenant and the Echo of Reese calling out to Fikrul's enemies from a new wielder. In that moment of Fikrul's death, the Echo even had enough individuality to choose Eramis over the corrupted Mithrax, implying that they can indeed express some pretty firm preferences when detached from their original owner. So it is possible that we might be able to see Tikal separated from Maya, and if that is the case, and if it does happen, someone else might be able to claim the Echo for themselves. The only issue, of course, will then be separating Maya from her Coral Vex. But if we do that, it then raises an interesting question all on its own. Should we entrust such a powerful tool to someone, or should we destroy it like we did with the Echo of Navigation? One step at a time, of course. First, we need to kill the conductor. Then we can decide the fate of her choirmaster. But that's all from me for now. I hope you enjoyed the video. This was actually one of those really interesting ones where I got to research something that ties from a ton of different places in Destiny's lore, and talks about a topic that I've wondered about for years. The Kugu are a fascinating group, and it was really nice to see them expanded in Echoes. It's even more interesting to see Tikal as a character develop into something that we might actually interact with. That's a really cool development in the lore. If you thought so too, go ahead and leave a like and leave your thoughts down below in the comments. And of course, if you want more lore from universes near and far, go ahead and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. But, as per usual, know that your viewership as always has been quite enough for me. And that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Per audacia ad astra. I'll see you, Starside.